You want to play Psychology Final Exam, Jordan Colley, Psychology 101, Spring 2025, Dr. Kadasia Stevens, April 2nd, 2025. A psychology of science. Psychology is considered a science because it uses a structured way to study how people act and what goes in their minds. Think of it like other sciences where researchers follow steps. They start with the idea they want to test, set up studies or experiments to collect information, look at the results, and then figure out what it all means about behavior in the mind. This step-by-step process is called the scientific method. Why is common sense not enough? Common sense isn't always enough in psychology because personal experiences and intuition can be misleading. Psychology Psychology uses a scientific method to test ideas objectively and gather evidence, which helps avoid biases and provides more reliable explanations for behavior and mental processes than just relying on what seems obvious or based on limited experiences. What is behavior and how does the brain and behavior connect? Behavior is anything an organism can be observed and measured. The brain and behavior are deeply connected because the brain is the biological bias for all behavior. It processes information, makes decisions, and sends signals that direct actions. Different parts of the brain control different types of behavior from basic reflexes managed by the brainstem to complex decisions involving the cerebellum. How do you describe the human brain model and why is it important to understand how the brain works within the science of psychology? Understanding the human brain model is important in psychology because it provides the biological foundation for understanding mental processes and behavior. Knowing which parts of the brain are responsible for different functions that help psychologists understand everything from basic sensations to complex thoughts and emotions and disorders. What are the typical psychological tasks and dilemmas through the lifespan? Erickson came up with a model that talks about how people develop through their lives. He said that there are 8 stages everyone's go through from being a baby all the way to being elderly. How do hereditary and environment affect development through life? Both what a person inherits and their experiences play a big role in development through the lifespan. Genetics through provide a blueprint influencing things like physical growth and potential. Environment, including family, culture, and experiences, shapes how those genetic potentials are increased. Development is a constant interaction between these two factors. How do cognitive psychology study mental and processes? Psychologists study mental processes like perception, which is how people interpret sensory information. Studying these processes can be tricky because they are subjective. They can happen inside a person's minds. Researchers use different methods like asking people about their experiences, measuring reaction times, or using brain imagery to try and understand these internal subjective processes in a more objective way. What does memory and sleep have in common? Memory and sleep are closely related. Sleep plays an important role in consolidating memories, which is the process where the brain strengthens and stabilizes new information learned during the day. Getting enough quality sleeps help improve memory function and learning ability. What is a behavior analyst, BCBA? A board-certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, is a professional who uses the ideas from behavior analysis, which is a scientific way to understand behavior. To become a BCBA, someone needs specific education, usually at a graduate level, supervised practice, and has to pass a certified test. BCBAs work in different places, often with people who has autism or developmental differences to help figure out behaviors and create plans to help. True or false? Pavlov's research the operant conditioning. That statement is false. Even Pavlov is famous for his research on classical conditioning, not operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is about learning through association, while operant conditioning, it linked to B.F. Skinner, is about learning based on what happens after the behavior. Unit 6, Memory. In general, how does memory work? Memory is a complicated process that involves three main states: encoding, storage, and retrieval. It's like how a computer processes and saves files. Psychologists often think of memory as having different parts of systems like really short-term memory, short-term or working memory, and long-term memory. How can you improve your memory? There are things people can do to help their memory to work better. Using mnemonic devices, which are memory tricks like making up acronyms or creating strong mental pictures, can make it easier to remember things, and actively trying to remember information instead of just reading it over. Unit 7, Cognitive Language and Creativity. How do we learn to think? Learning to think involves developing the ability to use mental representations like concepts and mental images. How do we acquire language? Language acquisition is a complex process that involves both innate abilities and environmental exposure. Children learn language by interacting with others, listening to speech, and practicing communication. Unit 8, Intelligence. Can personality be measured? While this unit focuses on intelligence, the concept of measurement is similar. Yes, psychologists use various methods to measure psychological constructs like personality and intelligence. How does hereditary and environment affects development through life? As discussed earlier regarding development in general, both hereditary and environment are significant factors that influence intelligence. Unit 9, Motivation and Emotion. What is behavior and how does the brain and behavior connect? Behavior is what people do and motivation is key driver of that behavior. Motivation involves needs, drives, and goals, energizes and directs action. How do cognitive psychologists and subjects study mental processes? This question relates to how psychologists study internal experiences like emotions, which are subjective mental processes. While emotions are felt internally, and cognitive psychologists and others study them through observable behaviors like facial expressions, heart rate, and self reports. Unit 10, Mental Health and Sexuality Identity. True or false? Identity is what someone identifies as, yet the biology of them is their sex they were born with. This statement is largely true in how identity and biological sex are understood in this context, but it's important to use precise language. Unit 11, Personality. How psychological, yeah. Psychological Psychologists use the term personality. Personality Psychologists use the term personality to describe the unique and relatively stable ways a person used to think, feel, and behave over time across different situations. Health, stress, and coping. What is a stressor and what factors determines its severity? A stressor is anything that is perceived as challenging or threatening and causes a stress response. Unit 12. Health, stress, and coping. Factors that determine how severe stressor is can include how predictable it is and how much control a person feels they have over it. What are problem focused emotion and emotion focused coping? Problem focused coping is a way of dealing with stress by directly addressing the source of the stressor, like making a plan to study more for a difficult test. Emotion focused coping is about managing the feelings that come with stress or when the stressor can be easily changed. Unit 13, Psychological Disorders. How is abnormality defined? Defining abnormality in psychology involves looking at several things, not just one. Behavior might be considered abnormal, but it's maladaptive. What are the major mental disorders? There are many different categories of mental disorder. Major types include anxiety disorders, mood disorders, psychotic disorders, trauma and stress related disorders, and personality disorders. Unit 14, Therapies. How does psychotherapy originate? Psychotherapy has roots in various historical practices, but modern psychotherapy largely originated with the Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis in the late 19th and early 20th century. Freud's taking care was one of the first systematic approaches to treating mental health issues by exploring the conscious mind. What is behavior therapy? Behavior therapy is the type of behavior that focuses on changing maladaptive behaviors by applying principles by learning, such as classical and upward conditioning. Unit 15, Part 1. How are the attitudes acquired and changed? Attitudes can be acquired through learning, like through experiences that are rewarding or punishing, or by observing the attitudes of others. What have social psychologists learned about conformity? Social psychologists have learned that conformity is a powerful social influence where individuals adjust their behavior or thinking to align with group norms. Unit 15, Part 2. What factors influence our willingness to help other people? Several factors influence whether someone is helpful to another person. How do psychologists explain human aggressive? Psychologists explain human aggression using various perspectives, biological explanations, look at genetics and brain structures. Unit 15, Part 3, Applied Psychology. What is applied psychology? Applied psychology is the part of psychology that takes the ideas, theories, and research findings and uses them to solve actual problems in the real world. How does psychology improve education? Educational psychology, a field within applied psychology, has significantly improved education. Psychologists in this area study how students learn, develop effective teaching settings, address learning difficulties, and work on issues like student motivation and classroom management. References. These are the references I use from sources such as sources from the textbooks, things from class discussions, and research materials that were looked at. And they are all in APA format.